My name is Ashley Vandenmyracker, and I'm a specialist with Duval County Public Schools Parent Academy. I'm also the parent of a middle schooler and an elementary schooler, both in DCPS schools. This year is my first year experiencing middle school, so it's been interesting. Um, and I will share the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever you want to know with you. I will happily share it with you. I thought I was prepared, and I was for some things. Um, Academically, we were fine, we were prepared. It's all the other stuff that comes with middle school that I didn't think about as a parent. Going into it, it's been a minute since I was a middle schooler. So it's a lot of different things that we're going to talk about tonight. But again, I want it to be interactive. So feel free to come off mute or type your question in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you again, and we'll get started. Here we go. All right, if you can't see that, let me know, but I think we should be good. So one of the biggest things that I think we can do as our students enter middle school, and hopefully, well, most of you probably have a fifth grader this year, or you're maybe transitioning to a new middle school and you just kind of don't know what to expect for next school year. Um, One of the biggest things I think we can do is let our kids learn how to be their own advocates. And that's a really unnatural feeling for us as parents because we're so used to jumping in and just solving problems. But it's okay to let them start to figure out how to solve problems. And if you have a student who's in fifth grade this year, you've got a couple weeks left of the school year. And I think that's honestly the best time to let them start trying to handle some of the smaller problems on their own. We don't want them to do anything big or drastic on their own, right? We want to be able to support them and advocate for them with those things. But with smaller things, it's okay to start letting your kids do that for the rest of the school year, especially now as grades are starting to wind down. Assignments are a little bit less frequent because we still have all the end of the year testing that's going on. Um, if they have a question about homework, it's okay. Let your student email the teacher. They have access to their email through DCPS. They have access to Focus, and they can email their teacher through Focus. So those little things are what I mean by let them start being their own advocate now. When they get into middle school, it's honestly the best route for your child to go is to be their own advocate first. Let them be the one to approach the teacher first. Ask the questions. Well, I thought I turned this assignment in, but Focus says that it's incomplete or it's missing or it's not turned in, or I got this grade, but I thought I did better. Let them be the first one to initiate that conversation with the teacher. And then depending on the answer, depending on that conversation, then it's perfectly okay for you to step in there and back them up and follow that up with your own email, your own phone call. Um, it's sort of like we're just backing away very slowly, taking baby steps. And again, this is not a big drastic change that we want to happen all at once. It's throughout that course of the school year for sixth grade. As they get to seventh grade, we want them to really be owning more of their own academics and advocating for themselves. So if we start at the beginning of the year and we take baby steps, each quarter we do a little bit more, then by the time they get to seventh grade, they'll be even more prepared. For Focus, I think it is a great idea for your student to get in the habit of checking Focus. Honestly, 2 to 3 times a week is not outrageous, especially in middle school. Teachers are adding new assignments to Focus in middle school daily. Sometimes they put them all in for the week at one time. Some teachers put them in a day at a time. Some teachers don't put them in until the end of the week. So it's important to stay on top of their Focus account so they can see what assignments are being added to their planner. but also so they can stay on top of their grades. What's missing? What do I need to turn in? Who do I need to email right now? That all helps them be able to own their academics and really, truly become their own advocate. Like I mentioned earlier, they have a student email account. It is their student number, it's a lowercase s, their student number at students.duvalschools.org. That is your student's email address. And they have access to it when they log into OneView at school or when they log into OneView from home, they have an Outlook option. And they can just go in there and they can look up their teacher by name. They can go through the Focus account and email their teacher that way, but it's important to get them in the habit of emailing and start talking about what is proper email etiquette. Make sure that there's a subject line that's relevant. Make sure that you start with a greeting, a capital letter, things that we know and that seem like they should know, but kids are so used to technology and texting sometimes that when it comes to an email, they forget the little things. So just start having that conversation with them. And again, we're not backing off completely. We're slowly backing away. So it's okay for us to follow up and contact the teacher. I will suggest that if your student emails their teacher, teach them how to use the CC option and have them CC your email address on that email as well. And then that way, if you have to follow up to that email chain, you're on it. You've been included in all the communication. So you're not out of the loop either. And then, if your student sends an email and asks a question, but they don't get an answer, you can respond and say, oh, hey, I just wanted to check in. Did you see, this question? Or I'm following up about this concern, that type of thing. Let's see. Okay, so this is a biggie, their own system, right? What works for me and my organizational way of thinking doesn't work for my kids the same way. They're both very different than I am. So we have to explore what works best for our child or our children. Organizational skills are not something that we just have innately. And I know it seems like sometimes it is like, oh, that person's just really organized. Well, yes, they are, or they might be, but organizational skills are learned. And so we have to teach them how to organize themselves, their time. Um, that jumped ahead a little too quick. Sorry about that. We have to do trial and error. What works, what doesn't work. So find a planner that works, find a calendar, a to-do list, whatever that looks like for your student. I know in elementary school, most schools or PTAs are giving out planners. When my son went to middle school this year, he was given a planner, but with 7 classes to keep up with in one day, the planner became overwhelming trying to, pull it out, make sure he got everything written down, or even when he went to look at it, it just felt like a lot. It was really overwhelming. So what we started doing was using this. We made a plan for the week for him because with 7 classes and you have homework in each class, that's a lot of assignments, especially in a week and especially if you have extracurricular activities. So we broke it down to Monday through Friday and then Saturday, Sunday. What do you have to get done? And he would write that in the must do column for that day. So on Monday, he has to get this done, must get this done. If he has time, what can he start and try and get ahead on? If there's even extra time, is there something he needs to continue working on that he already started on? So if on Monday he had to do one achieve lesson, and then he could start if there was time and into math lesson. Then on Tuesday, it might be continue working on, and he would write his into math lesson. Um, the majority of the work in middle school is online or done purely in class. There's not a lot of paper coming home like we're used to in elementary school. So it becomes very important that our students find that organizational um, format, method, strategy that works for them, that they can do on their own, and that they can keep up with and keep track of. So, again, if it's a planner, if it's color coded folders, if it's a big binder and there's a divider for each class, whatever that looks like, we just have to help them find that. And it definitely was trial and error for us. We started the school year with one big binder and a divider for each of his 7 classes. And honestly, that really didn't work for him. Um, he had a folder for a couple classes, and that worked maybe 50% of the time. Well, that's not great, not when you have 7 classes, and we have to stay on top of it because, again, with that many classes and that many assignments, it can feel like it starts to snowball and you're just overwhelmed with this workload. And that's not a healthy situation for anybody to be in. And so we finally just said, okay, don't worry about the binder. He had one folder and that plan for the week. And that's what he wrote all of his assignments down on. He still had his notebooks and things for class. But as far as just keeping his workload organized, we went to one folder, one paper, and that's what worked for him. So you just kind of have to play with it. And over the summer is a great time to start asking your student, hey, what do you think of this? What do you think would work? You're going to have this many classes. And if you are at a school where they're on an A day, B day schedule, maybe that means you have an A day backpack and a B day backpack. And then you don't have to worry about switching things around or, accidentally leaving something home if you just keep them separate. Whatever it's going to look like for you and your family to make it as easy as possible is really all that matters. Let's see. There we go. With that, I do want to take a minute and just talk about focus. Focus is huge in middle school. I know in elementary school, teachers primarily use it just as a way to communicate grades with teachers, but in middle school, it really became the hub of communication with the teachers. So, for example, there's the planner option, and all the assignments that the teachers put in for all 7 classes show up in that planner. So when you click on planner, this is what comes up, and it shows you the date, the assignment that's due, the class that it's for is in parentheses. And so you can see all of that. And then this is what I would use to look at his plan for the week. He would fill out the plan for the week. I would come behind him and I would compare his plan for the week and what he had written down to the planner that was in focus and when everything was due. Again, that's him being his own advocate. That's him owning his academic responsibility. I'm backing away, but I'm not leaving him on his own completely. I'm following up behind him to make sure it's, the best strategy for the week, to make sure he didn't forget if he had baseball practice or football practice or youth group, whatever that might be, but make sure it's all on there. You can click on any of the assignments, and if you click on one, this is what shows up. It shows you the date that it was assigned, the date that it's due, the category that it's in. Is it, classwork, a test, extra credit, whatever. Um, if it says the word resources next to details, that means you can click on that tab and there's something there that you can download or open. So in this case, it was the actual assignment that I could download. He can download it in his focus, and then he could actually complete it on the computer and then upload the assignment to focus. There was no printing it out and turning in a piece of paper. There was no doing it on paper in the classroom. It was doing it on the laptop in the classroom or finishing it at home and then uploading it to Focus to turn it in. So Focus really does become the hub for communication between the teacher and the student and the parent. Um, Study skills, just like organizational skills, they have to be learned. So what works for one person might not work for another, but study skills in middle school are huge. Again, you have 7 classes, whether it's 7 in one day or it's split over an A day or a B day, but it becomes such a big thing. And for many students, studying isn't something that they really had to do in elementary school a lot beyond, spelling words or vocabulary words. Very different in middle school. So study skills are learned. They need to be practiced once they find a way. So how they study for one class, they might have to study a different way for another class because the way they study for math might not be the same or might not work for studying for science. So it's important that they have a variety of strategies for studying in their toolbox and not just a one size fits all um, way of studying, right? And then you need to know when the tests are. They need to know when the tests are. Again, that goes back to that planner and focus. But even if you keep a calendar in the kitchen or the car, or if your child has a phone, send them a calendar invite on the phone to let them know that there's a test coming up. So that, sorry, oh, I couldn't hear. Sorry, my watch picked that up. So you can pick up, or so you can know what's coming up and when they need to study it and how they need to study for that test that's coming up, whatever that looks like. Um, and that goes to creating a study calendar, right? If you have a science test on a Friday and it's covering an entire unit, starting to study for it the night before is probably not the best way to go. We don't want to try and cram all that in. But if you know at the beginning of the week, because you checked the focus planner, that there's a test on science on Friday, then you can map out what that looks like. It also helps prevent studying for multiple things in one night, which goes back to we're trying to keep them from feeling overwhelmed, like there's so much going on. And then find a note taking method that works for them. I have found that most of his teachers have gone with the Cornell method of taking notes, and I wasn't very familiar with it at first, so I just honestly watched a couple YouTube videos on it, and then I could start to make sense of his notes. So honestly, even researching that over the summer might not be a bad idea. If you know how your child learns best, you might be able to go online and just Google different note-taking strategies and see which one sort of piques the interest of your student the most. So encouraging the struggle is the hard part. It is completely unnatural for us as parents and caregivers, but it's also so incredibly important for our children that we let them learn to embrace that struggle because it's okay for them to struggle. It's okay for us to let them struggle. Now, we're not letting them struggle to the point that they're in danger of failing, and we're not just throwing them out there to sink or swim on their own, but it is absolutely okay for them to stumble and fall a little bit, and we are there to help pick them up. Right, because when we struggle through a task, that's when we learn from the mistakes that we make. And ultimately, we grow and we become better at the content or better as a person because of that struggle. So it's hard, but we have to let them learn to live in the struggle a little bit. Um, Natural consequences, a lot of times, are the best teacher, right? If your child forgets their homework at home, as hard as it might be, don't take it up to the school and, drop it off at the office and say, oh, can you call so and so up here? He forgot his homework at home, or she forgot his homework at home. They forgot their homework at home. Try really hard not to do that. It's okay to let them have that consequence of points being taken off of the assignment because they had to turn it in late. It's okay if they get 1-0 on that homework assignment because they didn't turn it in because they forgot it. Now, is it okay in terms of, do I think zeros are acceptable? No, absolutely not. And that is part of the conversation we have. And that is a natural consequence of them forgetting their homework and then they're unable to turn it in. Well, you didn't turn your homework in, now you have a 0. So now that's an academic consequence, but now you have a different consequence at home because zeros are not acceptable and we don't do zeros, right? So that's that natural consequence in and of itself. Um, Focus on the growth, not the grades, especially for some of our students at the beginning of the year in middle school. It is so much going on, right? So just because our students might have been a straight A student or an AB student or even a BC student or whatever type of student they were in elementary school, there's no guarantee that they're going to stay that in middle school, especially at the beginning of the year. It's going to be a transition. It's going to be bumpy. So we have to allow room to celebrate the growth, what they're learning. Oh my gosh. Or you were struggling with this at the beginning of the year and we were having such a hard time, getting organized. But now here we are at progress report and I see that you've worked really hard to stay on top of your weekly plan or writing down your homework in your planner. Whatever that looks like, that's growth. And then you can look at that and celebrate that again at the end of the 9 weeks when grades come out. Even if those grades aren't perfect, even if they're not exactly what you would want to see, it's growth. So focus on that growth. Focus on just celebrating the little things, honestly. And then sometimes we have to change the questions we ask in order to help them embrace that struggle or change the way that they think about it. And if we can change the questions that we ask, we can change the way we think about that struggle for them as well. So instead of saying, how can I fix this for you? What do I need to do to just make this better and fix it for you? Start asking, how can I help you make this better? What support do you need from me? What can I do to help you feel comfortable in this situation? What do you need in order to be successful at school tomorrow? Do you have everything that you need in order to be successful at school tomorrow? So we have to change the questions that we ask in order to help them learn to embrace their own struggle. And honestly, in order for us to be able to embrace letting them struggle. Um, the social aspect of middle school. So this was bigger to me than I realized, not necessarily the concerns, but just all the social aspects that came with middle school. So they're not the seniors anymore. They're going to a new school with people from all different places. So many what if questions come up, right? Like, what if I don't know anyone? What if I can't find someone to eat lunch with? What if I get lost on the way to class, right? What if I need to use the restroom, but I don't know where it's at? All those questions create these little concerns that turn into big concerns because, try to think back to when you were in middle school. They didn't feel like little concerns then. They were big concerns then. Um, Encourage them to join a team or a club or some type of after school group where they're going to be around people who are interested in the same types of things that they're interested in. They'll be around the same group of people repeatedly. And so you just create the natural opportunity to get to know each other. And this one sounds a little silly, but honestly, practice having conversations with each other, but with people they don't know. So pretend you're strangers and practice having a conversation. Practice how to join a conversation that's already started without interrupting or inserting yourself in a way that just comes off as awkward and uncomfortable for everyone. Um, be a safe place for them to ask questions. And I know that that sounds obvious. And I know that I went into it thinking, well, yeah, I'm a safe place. I mean, I'm his mom. Of course, he should absolutely be able to ask whatever questions he wants. I wasn't necessarily prepared for the questions that ended up coming home, if that makes sense. Um, at some point, we finally had a conversation, and I just said, I want you to ask me anything you want, right? Like if you hear something at school and you don't know what it means, ask me. Do not go ask your friends because those friends don't know any more than he does, most likely, or they've Googled it on the internet and who knows what they know or what they think they know now. But I want to be able to control that narrative as the parent. And I want to be able to make sure that he's hearing the truth about what things are um, within the parameters and the limits that I think are acceptable for our family. So you have to really make sure that you're not just saying, come to me and ask me anything. You truly mean, come to me and ask me anything. And you have to be prepared for the anything. Um, it's everything, right? And some of the social concerns that I didn't even think about going into it until school started. What happens in the locker room, right? You have to change clothes for gym now, and that's new. So little things like that, just try and think ahead and anticipate what some of those things might be. Um, at the beginning of the year, there was an issue with boys just horsing around in the locker room when they should have been changing or they'd already changed and they still had a couple extra minutes and they were just horsing around. Well, it's middle school and hormones start changing. So my concern is somebody is just going to get upset one day and it's going to go from this is all fun and games to this is no longer fun and games and somebody's going to get hurt. So it's even having that conversation. And I had to talk to him about, well, you have to tell an adult, even if you don't want to, because, you don't want to be the kid that everybody looks at and it's like, oh, you told on somebody, right? Because then that creates a different concern for middle school and that social aspect. So we had to talk about how you can say something to your teacher in a way that you feel comfortable and without other people necessarily knowing that it was you that said it. So things like that. But at the end of the day, it is better for them to hear most things, everything, honestly, from us than it is to learn it from another middle school student. So just truly be that safe space and be open to anything that may come your way. Stay connected, right? Find new ways to ask about their day, ask them and tell you something funny that happened in the cafeteria. Something funny happened almost every day in the cafeteria, and if it wasn't something funny, it was something that annoyed him or irritated him, like he was at the table that got to go through the lunch line last that day. But just get them talking. So if there's not, oh, well, something funny that happened during the day today, then, well, did anything bother you that happened today? Were you annoyed by anything? Were you annoyed by anyone? Right? Or did you hear anything today that you're not really sure what it means? Do you have any questions for me? Um, just talk about everything and not just grades and not just homework, but ask about their friends. Who are they? What do they like to do? Well, what do y'all talk about? Um, Monitor their social media if they get a cell phone, if they already have a cell phone. If you allow them to have social media, make sure you monitor it because what they do on their social media can have a direct impact on their school discipline if it came to that. Um, Monitor their text messages if you let them have that privilege. Um, one thing that I added, so my son started riding the bus for the first time in 6th grade this year for middle school. So we got him a phone and I put Life 360 on it, just the free version, because I could see exactly where his bus was. I could see how fast it was going. I knew when he would be at his bus stop, and it would give me directions to him if I needed to get there. Um, and it's a free app, but I absolutely love it. And I track him every day, and he knows it. And I think that's okay too, right? You need to know that I'm watching you even when I'm not with you. Um, Highs and lows of the day, what made you feel really good? What made you feel really kind of crummy? Did anything make you feel crummy? It's okay if it did, but let's talk about it. Um, so the bedtime routine needs to evolve, but not disappear. Just because they're older and they think they're older and they think they're grown, they're not. They still need to have a bedtime routine. It just looks a little bit different now. So what does that mean? Is that a later bedtime? Is it reading in bed alone? Is it just having a conversation one-on-one with you? What does that look like? Allow it to change naturally, but keep a routine in place. Um, Middle schoolers think that they don't need their parents, right? They start pushing away, they start testing boundaries and limits and all of that. But if there is any time in their life that they need us more, I haven't found it yet. But to be fair, my oldest is a middle schooler. So they need us now more than ever. And we need to be there for them. So encourage teamwork. Check your parent portal every week. If you don't have your parent focus account set up yet, it only takes a few minutes. I encourage you to go ahead and get one set up, especially before the school year starts. But if you don't, you can always log in as your student and check theirs as well. Follow up with teachers if you need to, right? If your child sends an email and they don't hear back, just send a follow-up email. It's completely fine. They're busy. They have 300 something students. They're not going to be offended that you're following up. They're going to appreciate that you are an actively involved parent or caregiver trying to help your student and your child. Volunteer if you can. And I know volunteering was a little bit weird this year and then it changed, with all the COVID protocols, but volunteer as you are able, whether it's a field trip or going in with book fair or, joining PTA or the SAC committee and going to parent nights. Um, I recommend having conferences even in middle school. It's a team of 7 teachers. I recommend, at the beginning of the year, sometime maybe around progress report time, just request a conference with the whole team, with all 7 teachers. That way they can put your face to your name, to your child, and they know I'm here. I'm willing to communicate. I'm willing to help. What do I need to do? And you're just able to have that conversation because email is great, but sometimes it's hard, especially when they have 300 students. But if you can put a date and a time on the calendar and have that conference with them, I think it is worth it. And then I would recommend doing it again in January or February after the semester changes and they have 2 new elective teachers as well. I would do it again. Um, And that's it. I mean, it takes all of us working together. We are all Team Duval, and the teachers are there for you, the principal, the assistant principal, the guidance counselor, the front office clerk, us at Parent Academy. We're all working together trying to just do what's best for our students so that they can be successful. So that is it. I know that was a lot of talking on my part. I would love to hear from you if you have any questions, if there's anything that you're concerned about with middle school or you're just not sure about or anything like that. Feel free to come off mute, type it in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer it. And if I don't know the answer, then chances are I know where I can get the answer from for you. How do 504 plans or IEPs transition from elementary to middle? And then what steps do parents need to take to ensure the whole team of teachers are on board? So that's an excellent question. Um, I do not have direct experience with the IEP portion, but I do have experience with the 504. My son has a 504. So at the end of the year with the 504 or with the IEP, you should go ahead and evaluate the goals for this school year, where they met, all of that, and then you would set new goals for next year. The 504, if you didn't do it at the beginning of this year, you would do basically the same thing going into middle school. They have to sort of finalize it or update it for middle school before you leave elementary school. I will say that it was 5 or 6 weeks into the school year before we were able to sit down and actually meet with the guidance counselor and get my son's 504, updated for the current school year. Now, every teacher, the guidance counselor made sure that they gave every teacher a copy of the 504 already. So that was in place. They had it, they knew the accommodations. They had a list, each teacher had a list of students that had a 504 plan, what the accommodations were. And then my understanding was they had one for students with IEPs as well. I think the best way to make sure that the entire team of teachers are on board with the 504 is honestly, and this is why I said around progress report time, meet with that whole team of teachers. Call the front office, tell them you just like to have a whole team meeting, a whole team conference, and the front office clerk is usually the person who will set that up for you. So you're not emailing individual teachers. You just call the front office and they will schedule it with all 7 teachers. And then I would do it again after the winter break so that the new elective teachers are on board with that as well. Are all DCPS middle schools the same as far as how many classes? So yes, all middle school students will take 7 classes. Some will take 8 if it's an A day, B day. It is up to the school if they follow an A day, B day schedule. So on A day, they take 1, 2, 3, 4 classes, and B day, they take 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3, 4 classes. Or they do all 7 in one day. All right. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great night.